It's time to end the whisper. So many suffer in silence. I might not save them all, no, but I'ma die trying. It's time to end the whisper. Never thought in my life it would happen to me, but it did, and now I'm the voice for recovery.
Welcome to Real Talk about addiction and recovery, eliminating the whisper. I am your host, Scott Cochran, along with Jeff Breedlove.
Coach, this is our first ever two-part episode, and it's two parts because, the story that Britt is sharing is just so powerful, so authentic, so real. Britt, thanks for your transparency. Coach, kind of catch us back up from part one, and let's get going with part two.
So, obviously, we got Coach Britt Reid here with us today again for part two. And in part one, you got to hear the tragedy, right? You got to hear the story. You got to hear about his brother passing. Was a very emotional part, and then his own issues with alcohol. At first it was drugs, and then it became alcohol, which happens to a lot of people in recovery. They say that alcohol is the one that really got to them, that they were able to put the others down, but alcohol really jumped on, and that was prevalent in Britt's story. And we're to the point, basically we're to the point where the public knows, right? So he was in a car accident, and now he is getting sentenced. He doesn't know how the little girl's doing, or by now he knows that she is starting to recover, that was in the car accident, that he hit the car. But I want to hear right where we left off, right where the sentencing happened and what happened. And I want you to take it from there, Britt. Thanks again for being on.
Absolutely. Thanks again for having me, man. Love being here, and I appreciate the opportunity. So we kind of left off, February 4th, 2021, got in the accident, went to rehab. I was out. I posted bond, got charged, posted bond, and I had been out for about a year and a half, awaiting sentencing. And so it was November 2nd of 2022 that was my sentencing date. And originally I had been looking at 7 years in the state penitentiary, and I ended up, they sentenced me to 3 years. And I remember sitting in that courtroom, and the family was sitting behind me, and I had a couple supporters, some friends that had showed up to support me through that. And so I heard that 3 years, and just, my stomach just dropped, man. And in the grand scheme of things, 3 years isn't a big deal when you're talking about living 80, 90 years. But in that time, I had 3 little kids, and to think about being away from them for 3 years was just gut wrenching. And I knew that they were, they had already gone through a lot with the initial accident and the media coverage, and having to deal with that stuff at school, and just the toll it was taking on them. Me being away, going to rehab for a little over 3 months. And so I knew that was going to kind of come back up, and they were going to have to answer a lot of questions. They were going to get a lot of questions from their friends and from other people. And I think that was really hard for me, because I knew I couldn't be there to comfort them. And so really I didn't know what I was walking into, the unknown, and the media coverage was so intense that you don't know what's going to happen once you get inside those walls, and but I got sentenced to 3 years. And at that point my sobriety date is February 21st of 2021. So God willing, I'm coming up on 4 years, but
yeah, baby.
I appreciate it. And I know the accident happened February 4th, but I consider February 21st because I had the surgery and they had me on painkillers and stuff. And so February 21st was the first day that I didn't have anything affecting me from the chin up in my body. And so, but I knew going into prison that I wanted to do that. I wanted to go through that clean and sober. And I knew that, I couldn't change what had happened in the past, but I could possibly help somebody else. And that was my mindset going into it. And listen, it was hard. When they first, they took me right from the courtroom, put me in handcuffs, took me across the street to the county jail. I was in there overnight. Car picked me up in the morning and drove me up to St. Joseph's, Missouri. And so there I sat in, the Missouri Department of Corrections. And because of how high profile it was, they stuck me into ADSEG, which is the hole, administrative segregation. And I didn't know all the stuff that was going on behind the scenes and all that, but come to find out that, they were concerned for my safety. They didn't want people trying to extort me or whatever, people that felt some type of way about the accident or whatever to do anything. And so they were actually trying to send me out of state to Iowa and just try to get me as far away from Missouri as they could. Luckily that didn't happen. But I was in St. Joseph's, Missouri for 7 days. And then they transferred me across the state to a penitentiary called Bonne Terre, which is on the other side of Missouri. And they stuck me in solitary. And so, the first 2 weeks I was sitting in this jail cell, tiny. I was in a one-man cell by myself, no books, no anything. And I had a lot of time to process stuff. And so I remember, there's only so much sitting there thinking you can do. And, I would take up my other time by push-ups, sit-ups, whatever I could do. I saved a milk carton from one of the food trays that they brought us, and I had it in the corner, and I'd take toilet paper and wet it and ball it up and sit there and shoot, these things into a milk carton for hours. But that whole time, I had a lot of time to reflect and really look at myself and the damage that I've caused. There's no question about it. I take full responsibility for that. I truly, I deserve to be in there. What I did was completely unacceptable, and I hurt someone that was completely innocent. And so, but I had a chance to think about that and what direction did I really want to go with this thing. And so, but I knew I'm going to do this thing clean and sober, and you can get anything you want in prison. There's drugs, there's whatever you want. But I wasn't going to go that route. I think it was important for me to be able to sit through those feelings and try to do what I could do to help someone else that was still struggling with addiction or whatever issues they had. And so that's what I did. And so after I was in Bonne Terre for, I don't know, a couple months, and they finally, you go through the intake process, they classify you, you take all these tests, IQ tests and educational tests, and they give you a classification, right? And so you have different levels of the prison system. And so they ended up sending me out from Bonne Terre to Tipton, Missouri, which was a level 1 penitentiary. And that's where I went.
What does
so
level 1 mean?
Level 1 is the lowest level. It's minimum security, I guess they would call it. I mean, I don't see what the minimum security is, but basically I wasn't confined to a cell. It was more barrack style housing. So you lived in these houses, and there were kind of split in two. You had 50 bunk beds on one side and 50 on the other. And it was just open bay is what they called it. And so
I'm thinking of Full Metal Jacket here. I'm thinking of that movie.
Yeah,
So
yeah, something like
barracks
that.
Okay.
Yeah. And, that's a unique experience in and of itself. There's not a whole lot of security and you don't know all these people that are around. And so that took some getting used to. But one thing I did when I was there was, so that place had an AA meeting.
Wow.
And so I would go to that. They had NA and AA. And so one day they had the NA meeting. On Tuesday, I'd go to that meeting. And then on Thursday, I'd go to the AA meeting. And, I had worked the 12 steps prior to going into prison. And I had actually just gotten my first sponsee before I got sentenced. And I remember calling him and telling him, hey, I might be going away for a while, so I think you might need to find a new sponsor.
Right.
But that experience in and of itself prior to going to prison had a huge impact on me, because me being there for someone else and trying to help them through their addiction and their recovery did more for me than I swear I could ever do for them. And so that's kind of the approach I took when I went in there. There were a lot of guys. I mean, listen, we talked about it the last time I was on here, but addiction affects every walk of life. And our prison system is so filled with people that have grown up with addiction just throughout their whole family. And a lot of them are locked up because of addiction. And so we had a great community there. I met some great people in those meetings. I was able to check a AA book out, a big book out. And I just kind of rededicated myself to going through that and reading that every morning and doing what the program says, doing those little things every day really helped me. And then,
Britt, let me ask you a question about those meetings. Did the authorities allow like peers or folks to come in to your place, or were they self-contained meetings, only people inside?
Yeah, so we had people from the local AA group in the community that would sign up, and they were facilitators, and so they would come in and help facilitate the AA meeting. But a lot of the times, not a lot. I mean, it was really just like any other AA group out there. The inmates ran it. We had 3 people that were elected to basically. They had access to the cabinets to get the reading material out. We would set up the room, and then our facilitator would come in, but he would just kind of sit back, or she would sit back and just jump in and share just like anybody else. And so it was really awesome to go through that and hear all the different shares, and the fact that you had someone from the outside who had many years of recovery being able to relate with these guys inside these prison walls. And like I said, it was a kind of a tight-knit group. We all would see each other out on the yard, and we just had this bond, and we would help each other through things. And there were some of the most real shares I've ever heard in my life inside those prison walls, and just how it doesn't discriminate. And the things that we go through on a day-to-day basis, it doesn't matter how much money you have. It doesn't matter the color of your skin. It doesn't matter any of that, right? We're all human beings, and we all go through the same stuff. And so being able to sit there and listen and process that, it truly helped me get through that time in there. I would always say that in prison, it's the most negative atmosphere you can ever go into as a human being. It just sucks the energy out of you, right? You're being told what to do at every waking moment. They tell you when to go to bed, when you can shower, when you can't, when you can eat. And so it breeds a lot of negativity. And listen, there's a lot of guys in there that aren't in the program, right? The majority of guys aren't working a program, and they're so used to that lifestyle, and they're always trying to get away with something. And so just it's kind of a survival of the fittest type deal. And so it was a reprieve from that. You know, you could go into these AA meetings or NA meetings, and you had like-minded people that were willing to be vulnerable, right? And in a place like that, you don't show vulnerability. You don't show weaknesses. You don't talk about stuff that's happening on the outside and how it's affecting you mentally and physically. But in those rooms, we had created this safe space where you could share that stuff, and we all support it. It was just men supporting each other, right? And I think there's a beautiful thing about that, and I could relate to that because of where I came from, right? That's how a locker room is. Right. In the locker room, you know the guy next to you, you know his strengths and weaknesses, right? And the great teams are the ones that, you know, my strengths cover up your weaknesses and your strengths cover up my weaknesses, right? And then we battle together, and we try to make those weaknesses less of a weakness for us. And that's kind of what I saw going on in those rooms. It was so powerful. It was so awesome. And listen, I was dealing with a lot, you know. While I was in there, my wife filed for divorce, and wow. And that was a huge blow to me, you know. And listen, I don't blame her. I put that woman through hell, and you know, because of my addiction and the constant toll it was taking, I wasn't really present, right? And so here she is. When I was home, I wasn't truly present and there for everybody, and being the father and the husband that I should have been. And that took its toll. And then what I put my family through, the media coverage, you know, her taking the kids to activities and people looking at her a different way. And just, you know, you always feel like there's eyes on you. And so, and then I get sentenced to 3 years, you know, and now she's having to deal with all that again by herself. And it was just too much. And so she ended up filing for divorce, and so I was trying to process that in there, you know, and again, you don't share that kind of stuff with people in there. But because of the program of AA, I was able to find an hour out of my week, 2 hours out of my week through NA and AA, where it was a safe place where I could share that stuff. And it wasn't getting back to everybody else on the yard where guys are going to try to use that against you. And so being able to have that type of environment inside such a negative place was truly a blessing. And it made me grow to love this program even more, right? But so, yeah, she filed for divorce, and there were some things there. I didn't have a whole lot of access to my kids, and I listen, I didn't get to see my kids for over a year. And so that took its toll, you know. But I went through that. I went and saw the parole board while I was in Tipton. And the first time going to see the parole board, you sit down in this room, and there's a couple people in the room with you, and then there's some people that are based out of the Capitol, which is Jefferson City, Missouri, that are on a Zoom call, and they ask you questions, right? And they try to gauge where you're at, and they look at the offense, and they look at your what you've done in prison. What jobs did you hold? What did you try to further your education? What were you doing? And so they looked at all that stuff, and
what jobs did you hold?
Well, when I was in intake, when I was at Bonterre going through intake, I worked in the kitchen. And so we prepared meals and served the meals. And
how bad was the food?
You know what? I have a whole new respect for food on the outside. It got better though while I was there. It definitely got better. They changed their whoever they were getting the food from, and it did get better. But yeah, it's nothing to write home about. That's for sure.
But I have to
But
tell you, I'm nothing like you, but I do have 3 days in the DeKalb County, Georgia jail, and the food was absolutely positively nothing to write home about. It was terrible.
it is terrible, and sometimes you don't really know what's on that tray. You
No,
know,
right, exactly.
you got some mystery meat or whatever they
Right.
say it is. But
Right.
I will give the state of Missouri credit because so I was locked up for 2 Thanksgivings and 2 Christmases, and they did a wonderful job. I mean, they really. I'm not sure exactly who it was, the governor or whoever's on the parole board or the corrections board or whatever, but they did those 2 meals were as close to a home cooked meal as you possibly could get. And boy, they loaded that tray up, and no one was leaving that cafeteria, that mess hall hungry. And so,
So you're going in front of the
yeah,
you're going in front of the parole board,
yeah.
and tell me about your nerves and what you're like. Are you trying to get your sentence reduced? Are you trying to just see your kids? What is when you go in front, tell me about how you're feeling.
Yeah.
I see
So,
you're a little nervous thinking about it.
I was very nervous because listen, those people, they basically hold your freedom in their hands, and with your sentence, right? It doesn't matter if you killed somebody, if you're a murderer, a drug dealer, whatever it is, whatever your sentence is, normally, unless it's a violent crime, like murder or something like that. So if you have a violent crime, you normally have to do 80% or 85%. And so the other ones, the parole board can basically release you. Anyway, they have these guidelines that they go through. And so I was nervous because I mean there's a possibility that I could have had to do 85% of 3 years, and but they do that so when you get out, you're on parole, and so it's a way to help integrate you back into the system. If you screw up, then you go back for the remainder of your time. And so I was hoping that they were gonna see the good that I was doing in there, and let me out after a year. But I wasn't sure. You never know. And so, and listen, I wasn't gonna go in there and try to. I'm not gonna talk myself up or do any of that, because I don't think that was fair to anybody. I think my biggest thing is I got to own this. And whatever they feel is the punishment, then that's what I need to do. And so, I mean, did I try to do some things that that would help reduce my sentence? Absolutely. But at the same time, I was doing some stuff that I wanted to do just for me and to try to give back. And so, I mean, like my second job, I applied for basically to help handicap people inside the prison, guys in wheelchairs or amputees or whatever that needed, or older gentlemen that needed help, whether it was pushing them to meals, pushing them up to medical to get whatever medication they were on, if they had an accident, cleaning up their bed. Some of them would fall, bust their heads open, so you'd kind of try to look after them. And so but I did that because again, just trying to give back, trying to be a service. And that was the thing that I got from AA, right? Is when I'm in service, I'm taking myself out of me.
Right.
And I know that's the best way for me as an addict to help myself and get out of myself, get out of my own head, and try to give back. And so, but yeah, so that's what I did for my second job, and the parole board ended up coming back with a 2-year sentence, or my release date was October 31st of 2023, and so, or I'm sorry, of 2024. And so, that was kind of a blow. That was longer. I had this conversation. It was actually the very first conversation I had with my daughter. Um, after I got locked up, and she said, "Dad, you're not going to be home for my birthday."
Mm.
And I said, "Yeah, you're right." And I said, "But I promise I'm going to be there for the next one, right?" And and so when I got that date back, it was, not only was I staying in there longer than I had hoped, but I had just broken a promise to my daughter,
Right.
and that was hard. That's a hard one to swallow. That's hard for me to just talk about right now. But it is what it is, and I had to just man up and try to keep doing the next right thing, and I couldn't. When you're in there again, it's such a negative environment. Those little things can really pull you into this deep dark void, and you can say screw it and just start wiling out in there. You
Right.
get your hands on some drugs. Listen, I knew how to get rid of these feelings. I had done it for a long time, and I knew the fastest and easiest way was I could put something in my body or up my nose or whatever, and but again, that's not where I was at, and I needed to feel all those feelings, right? I needed to go through that and live with that and work through it clean and sober, because I knew on the other end, this was only temporary and this too shall pass, but it's going to make me stronger on the other side. And so, I had to swallow that. And they also came back with that they were sending me. I had to do basically a state rehab is what it was. So there's they're called therapeutic communities, and they send you to another facility, and it's recovery, it's therapy, it's classes 24/7, right? And I didn't really want to do that, that addict part of me was like, hey, I don't need that. I already went to rehab.
That's right. That's right.
I'm comfortable here. I'm in a routine. I'm working out. I know some people, and I don't want to break that routine. I mean, listen, we're humans, and it's just natural for us. We're creatures of habit, right? And we don't like change. And so that was something really hard for me to swallow. But it ended up being the best thing for me. They sent me to Maryville Correctional Facility up in Maryville, Missouri. It's right on the border of Missouri and Iowa. And so I went up there, and that was a unique facility. I mean, it was an old convent that the Catholic Church had donated to the state, and the state had basically had a rehab there, and then they ended up turning it into a prison facility. So you had the convent up top on this hill, and then down the hill was this old elementary school built in like 1969. And they had turned some of the classrooms into dormitories in the school, and then up in the convent, they called them floors, but it was split in half. The building was split in half, and so you had 2 floors on the one side and 2 floors on the other, and that's how you were classified, right? There were 7 floors on that camp, and you would go to your classes with your floor. You would we had all these different roll call type things. In the mornings we would meet. We called them families. The floors were called families, and each family had a name, and then we would have, I think it was twice a year, we would have like these games, these competitions. For Christmas, it was who could decorate their common room the best, and you had these certain stipulations. They'd give you the supplies; you couldn't use anything else, and so, but it built that camaraderie, right? And then you had, you would get elected to different roles. So you would have the president, or the head of the family, and then some counselors below them, and then you had people that you had to walk in these structured lines to classes, to meals, and so you'd have guys that would walk next to the line and make sure everybody was doing what they were supposed to, walking, in form. And you had to walk with your hands in front of you, with your wrists clasped, and it was somewhat military style. But I jumped right into that and said, hey, you know what, I want to apply for one of these and see if the family will vote me in. And so I did that, and I just kept working my way up until I got, the last part that I was there. I was the head, and running the family meetings and all that stuff. And again, it was just a way of being of service. And I would try to share some of my experiences with them. And again, it related to me because of where I came from, right? That locker room atmosphere, that team atmosphere. And that's how I saw it. We were a team. And if one guy's screwing up, it's affecting the rest of us, and I remember I shared a story with them pretty early on when I was there. We were having some disciplinary troubles. And if you have too many disciplinary issues with your family, they basically put you in lockdown, where they put you in a classroom and you sit across from each other in these rows, and you talk about the issues for hours, like all day. And this can go on for a week, and you don't get any rec. You don't get to go work out. You don't get to go play handball or whatever guys did. And so we were on the verge of that happening. And so I remember sharing this story, and it was 2019. I had just got on with Steve Spagnuolo, and he came in. We had just changed our defense. We went from a 3-4 to a 4-3. And that year we won the Super Bowl. But that first half of that season, we were one of the worst defenses in the NFL. And I remember him, we had these shirts made that said, iron sharpen iron as one man sharpens another, right? Proverbs. And so I remember getting up there, and I told him that story, and I said, look, we adopted this because we're all men, right? And so guys started to hold each other accountable. And that's not saying that we were tearing each other down and MFing people and berating them. No. We had a standard, and we were going to set each other to that standard. And if you weren't meeting that standard, guys were going to let you know. And hey, this is how we do things around here. And they ended up turning that around, and going into the Super Bowl, we were one of the best defenses in the NFL, and it ended up showing in that game, and we ended up coming back and winning a Super Bowl. Right. And I think that resonated with guys because, you always guys want to feel like they're a part of something. Right. And even though it's a negative environment and people have this persona that they feel like they have to keep up, at the end of the day, you want to be a cohesive unit, and you want to feel like you belong to something. And when you can work towards something greater than yourself, right, you can do amazing things. And we ended up turning that floor around, and ended up being one of the best floors on the camp. I mean, we were the best floor. We ended up winning an incentive that we got to have a movie night down in the gym on the big screen with the projector, and they gave us popcorn. And I mean, that's a big deal in there, man. Like, you don't get anything in prison.
What was the movie?
What was it? Oh, it was Maverick.
Yes.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
Great movie.
And so to hear that with the surround sound and up on the big screen and just hanging out, I mean, that was unbelievable. And so, but again, I was just trying to bring some type of positivity in this negative environment, and just try to help guys out. And so the one thing that was really surprising to me was when I got there, here you're in a recovery community based around addiction and recovery. And they didn't have a functioning AA meeting, right? That wasn't something that they pushed to these guys. And that kind of bothered me, right? And so me and another guy ended up writing letters to administration and going to the higher ups, and we ended up getting an NA meeting and an AA meeting started and going in there. And there's guys that went to those meetings, that started going to those meetings. And listen, at first there was only like 3 guys going to these meetings. I mean, it was hard. Sometimes there was just 2 of us,
Right.
But 2 addicts together, you got a meeting.
You got a meeting.
And so it slowly grew over the 8 months that I was there. And I saw some of those guys when I got out. I actually saw some of those guys at local AA meetings in Kansas City.
Nice.
And it was pretty cool to see that. You had guys that were longtime addicts. I mean, no teeth in their mouth from all the meth, and and here they are rebuilding their lives through the program of AA.
Britt, let me ask you about that if I can. So
Yeah.
And I'll be blunt. You had an incident occur, and you went through the justice system in Missouri and accepted and or at least had no choice but to deal with those consequences. Now, we say stigma is a big part of our disease. And so a lot of folks listening to this haven't been through anything like the 3 of us have been through, similar but different. And some people will say, well, who cares about those people in prisons or jails? They get what they deserve. And, those are our brothers and our sisters in different facilities. Many of them had their initial consequence because of a medical disease. And then something stemmed from the fact that they have a disease, and now they find themselves in a correctional institution. What would you say to somebody out there listening to this podcast that would help them understand that everybody can get recovery? Everybody deserves a chance at recovery. Everybody deserves another chance in life on top of recovery in general. What's your message to those who bring that stigma to remind them that therefore, but the grace of God go I?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. I mean, I would say that, and I think you guys might agree with me, but who we are in our addiction is not who we really are, right? When we're in our addiction, I know for myself, I was not the person that God intended me to be. And I did some awful things. But once you have that psychic change and you're able to start working a program of recovery, and you start making those amends and start working through that process, some of the greatest people I've ever met, I've met in these rooms of AA and NA. And some of the hardest working people, some of the most dedicated employees are sitting in those rooms that people won't give a chance to because of this stigma, right? And I truly sympathize with those men and women incarcerated who get out, because, I mean, listen, I have every opportunity in the world with the last name I have, the people I've met throughout my life. And when I got out of prison, I could not get a job. I mean, people would not hire me. They wouldn't entertain the fact that I was seeking a job. And so I can only imagine what some of these other guys go through. And listen, I only have a handful of guys that I've talked to that have been able to relate their stories to me. And it's unbelievable how these guys have made such a change in their life, and people that knew them in their addiction would not recognize these people how they are today. And but because of those past transgressions, they're not given the opportunities that most people are. And I think that's very unfair. I think our communities, our workforce, employers are missing out on some unbelievable employees and people that can truly change the environment of their businesses, of their communities. And unfortunately, the way our society is right now, a lot of those people don't get an opportunity. But I will say that one of the hardest things to do in life is to make that change. And really, the program of AA and NA, the 12 steps, I think everybody should work those, because it makes you look within yourself, right? And own what you did, and remove everybody else's issues or whatever parts they played in things, and truly look at yourself. And when you can look within yourself and you can really put that stuff under a microscope and dissect it and process it, that's where true growth happens. And so these people that have done that have grown tremendously, and all they would be is an asset, And not to say, listen, there are some people that relapse and have some hiccups along the way, but the majority of these people that really put in the effort and make that change, I think deserve a second chance. And
No, I think that's an important message for you to share, because there's some business owners in Georgia, just to talk about my home state. Jay Cunningham runs a place called Superior Plumbing. It's very well known across Metro Atlanta. John Loud runs Loud Securities, a very, very well known security system. Tip Top Poultry is a very large poultry industry and company in Georgia. And the men that run those three places, they go out of their way to hire people in recovery, because they have found out they are the hardest working employees with the most integrity, uh, and the greater work ethic. And even Jay Cunningham has done videos about his posture on that. And I do think you're right. I mean, it's a chronic, progressive, deadly disease, and there will be, just like, to make it about an I statement. Certainly, I had years where I had setbacks and or relapses, as people might say. And but once you get really into recovery and you get some years of sobriety under your belt, and you can look at a prospective employer and say, "Yeah, I've got time in recovery." You know, I think there's a whole movement out there called recovery friendly workplaces. And the more businesses that look into that concept, and that's one of the projects of AARA, is to help spread the concept of a recovery friendly workplace, so that we can have stronger workforces, so there's more people paying taxes in communities instead of taking taxes in communities. So, you're validating the whole point of a recovery friendly workplace, which is one of the big projects Coach and I will be working on with your leadership on our board, of building recovery friendly workplaces. Just one more quick question. You alluded to this earlier, and I know we're talking broad conceptual, we're not talking about exact percentages, and we can just talk about men for a minute, because that was your experience. But would you say that there's certainly a number, maybe it's a big number, a medium number, a small number of men that at some point are willing to seek out recovery when they're in prison? Would you say that's a fair statement?
Absolutely. I think that prison has a unique way of humbling you and bringing you to your knees, and seeing those issues that are really prevalent, and that there needs to be a change, because no one wants to be in prison. It's an awful place, and to keep going back there means you're not changing, right? And so I think there are a number of guys that have gone into that prison system and seen that hey, there's a better way, there's a solution here, and they jump on it. And I'm not saying AA and NA is the only way to go about it. There's a lot of guys that find Jesus Christ and find faith inside those prison walls. But yeah, I would say a lot of guys are willing to look within themselves and make those changes in there.
That's good to hear, and I think that's educational for a lot of folks. So come on, it's exciting. Keep going. Tell us what happens next.
Yeah, I want to hear. I want to jump to the. Okay, I want to kind of fast forward and go through the freedom, right? When you walk out that door, okay, you're leaving prison. Your wife has left you. Well,
Yep.
and now you have the kids. You got to probably deal with how. I want to hear about how all that went down.
Yeah. So after completing that program, I actually got 6 months taken off of my sentence or my time in, and so they moved my out date to I believe it was May 1st of 2024. And then one day I woke up and they told me to pack my stuff. This was March 1st, and the governor had commuted my sentence, and so I thought I still had 2 more months to go, and they're telling me to pack my stuff, and I was elated, right? And so I packed my stuff up, and they take me to the parole office, and they put me on house arrest. But coming back into the real world, I had a lot of stipulations on me, classes, therapy, things that I had to go to. I had community service, hours that I had to fulfill each month. I have a breathalyzer device in my car to start my car.
Mm-hmm.
I have, I had to fight to see my kids and try to regain custody there. And then I was living at my parents' house. I mean, and I had nowhere to go. I had lost my house. And so, but my worst day out here is still better than my best day in there, And so, that's the approach I took. And I got to do all those things. I got to be of service. I got to do community service. I got to drive a car. I got to blow into this thing to drive a car. I was able to do those things. That was a gift to me, that was an absolute privilege. And so, I just started small, man. I was locked in this house for most of the day. I had a couple hours where I could go out trying to find a job and that stuff. But again, I got to sleep in a nice bed. I got to take a nice shower by myself. I got to eat some good food.
Right.
And so, it was a lot to what my life looked like before I went into when I got out was very different. I wasn't living with my kids. I didn't have a wife. And so, that was all, again, in perspective. You can let that stuff drag you down and pull you down and, oh, woe is me type deal. But that's not the approach I tried to take. And so I just attacked it head on. It's no different than coaching. I mean, you might get your butt whooped in a game, and you got to go in Monday morning, put that tape on, find the issues, and let's find a solution to these issues, and then let's just start working at it. And the only way to do that is one step at a time, maybe 1 hour at a time, one day at a time. And so that's the approach I took. And I went about my business, and I was trying to find a job. That was probably the toughest part of it. Luckily, I found, this lady who had started a health and wellness company. I'll give her a little plug, Lexi J Wellness. She ended up taking a chance on me, her and her husband, and they hired me. And so that was great. Then they extended my time out of the house. I had this ankle monitor on.
Now, Britt, let me ask you right there. This lady, give her another plug. What's the name of the place?
Lexi J Wellness.
So she and her husband take a chance on you. What I want to ask you, just spend a minute on this. I don't want to know what happened. I want to know how that made you feel when that happened.
I was so incredibly grateful. You're getting me a little emotional right now. So many people I had felt just had given up on me, and they didn't want any parts of me. And for someone to welcome me into their business, into their community, I'd run through a brick wall for them. It was one of the greatest feelings ever to feel like someone wanted you, and that you weren't a complete screw up, and that you had some value to bring to somebody. I felt lower than whale poop at that time. I just, I didn't think I was ever going to get a job. I didn't think anyone would ever believe in me. I had my family believing in me, but no one outside of that immediate group I felt like was believing in me. And so for her and her husband to take that chance on me, I owe them a lot, and again, I would run through a brick wall for them, because when no one else believed in me, they did. So extremely grateful.
That's powerful stuff right there. That's the power of recovery right there.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Absolutely.
All right. So keep going on the journey.
So I get this job. They extend my time out of the house, so I get to go to work. And listen, what working for that company has done for me personally is beyond measure. It's a health and wellness company, and so they pride themselves on taking care of yourself, both really all three phases: mentally, physically, and spiritually. And so I started working out with them. I'd go to work, we'd work, we would work out for a little bit. They introduced me to rucking, which is basically a weighted backpack, and you walk with this weighted backpack on, and it's actually helped me tremendously with my back issues, because with that weight on your back, it forces you to constrict your core and build those core muscles up, and so it helped me work through. I'm a true believer in this. I think that working out has been a tremendous part of my recovery journey, because when you work out, those natural endorphins that are released helped me tremendously with my mental health, and just feeling better about myself, which then radiates outward, and so they helped me get back into shape, man, and showed me, a great way to go about it. I got to learn a whole new business that I wasn't used to. I'm used to coaching up big 300-pound dudes and, grinding away on the grass field. But here I am basically in an office setting and working behind the scenes and learning the ins and outs of a business. And I knew how coaches and organizations treated their employees, but I felt like that was kind of a world of its own, and to see how she goes about handling her employees and her community was a great learning experience for me. It opened my eyes to a lot of things, and so just got back into that. I worked through gaining custody of my kids. So at first, I was only allowed to see him for like 4 hours a day, once a week, or 4 hours a week, I should say. And so that gradually progressed to, I would get them on Wednesdays and Thursdays after school from 4 to 8. And then that progressed to, I would have them Wednesdays and Thursdays after school until 8, and then I'd get them every other weekend. And so, they had their little rooms at my parents' house, and we got that set up, and then that again kept progressing until now I get them 50-50 time, and again, I think everything happens for a reason. And this whole incident has really kind of been a blessing in disguise for me. In the coaching profession, you spend so much time at the office, and especially in season, you don't see your family a whole lot. And so for years, I missed out on a lot of things with my kids. And so now here I am. I work for a great company that gives me great flexibility, and I'm able to do these things with my kids and spend time with my kids that I never imagined I'd be able to do. And I get to go to, school function. They have an assembly in the morning, and Lexi lets me take off and go to the assembly. Right. They get sick at school, and the school calls me, "Hey, can you pick them up?" "Yeah, I'll be there in a minute." And I head on over. And so it's really been a blessing in disguise. And I know I can't make up for the time that I've lost with them. That year and a half that I spent in prison, I'm never going to get that back with my kids. But through this program, through AA, through recovery, the time that I spend with my kids now, I'm truly a present father. I'm there for them. I'm not zoned out in some other realm. I'm there. I can hear them. I can relate to them. I feel their struggles. I feel their love. I feel their happiness, their sadness, and that's been the greatest gift through all this. I got to help out coaching my son's football team.
That's what I wanted to hear about. I'm waiting to hear about coaching. Like, I'm sitting there waiting to hear how this went down, because I know the itch doesn't go away.
No,
right?
It definitely doesn't.
The doors were closed. I mean, the door, like, your dad is the head coach at Kansas City, right? He is the head coach of the Chiefs, and you can't get a coaching job. Something that's all you've ever really done, right? Is coached or played, and all those doors are closed. And then something happened. This is the part I've been waiting for you to get to.
Yeah. So, like Scott said, man, I needed my football fix.
That's right.
And I knew I wanted to give back as well. And so I actually got to coach 2 teams this past year. I went to a local high school in Kansas City, Central High School, and met with the head coach there, Mike Kleiss. And this high school didn't have a football program the year before. And so they had just hired Coach Kleiss, and he was coming in trying to rebuild this program. And I asked him, I said, "Hey, man, I love coaching. I love football. I love everything about it. Could I help out?" And he was like, "Absolutely, man." And so the school worked with me. He worked with me, and I got to go help out, coach this football team and try to develop young men. And that was awesome. And then, so I would do that, 2 to 3 times a week. And then I would coach my son's football team, and I would help out there. And so it was awesome. I mean, it's such a different atmosphere from the NFL, right? I mean, and listen, I still have great relationships with people, and here these kids are in the inner city, and a lot of them. I'm going to tell you a story. So one of my first days there, we're walking out to the football field, and we got to walk across this street, this main street, and down their football field is kind of down in this like gully thing. And so I'm walking out, and these guys are behind me, some of the players, and they're talking about their dads, right? And one of them was like, "Man, I don't know my dad. I've never met my dad. He's been in prison my whole life." And another guy's like, "Yeah, man, my dad's been in and out of prison." And and I got to kind of relate to them, like, "Hey, things happen. Things come up in life, and people make decisions, and people might go away. But one, I'm sure your father still love you, right? But two is like you don't have to go down that same path, right? I know the environment you're in is not the greatest, right? There's drugs, there's violence, there's all types of things around you, surrounding you every day that you got to go home to. But there is a better way, and you can change that for the next generation, right? And I remember one day, Chris Jones called me up, and this was over the summer, and he wanted to work out. And he was like, "Hey, can we get I'd been training him, since I lost my job in Kansas City. I've been training him in the off season." And he was like, "Hey, can we get some work in?" And I was like, "Yeah." I was like, I got practice. We got lift and practice at the high school down in Kansas City, but I'm sure if you swing by, we can use the equipment and we can get a session in. And so we were in the weight room, and Chris Jones comes walking in. Went and met him outside, and we walk into the weight room, and these kids turn around and listen. Chris is a big man. I mean, you're talking 6'6", 300 pounds, and just rocked up. And for him to walk through that door, kind of dip his head and walk in through that door, and these kids turn around and they were like, "No way." And Chris is a legend in Kansas City.
Yes.
I mean, he is a fan favorite and one of the greatest human beings, one of the funniest people you'll ever meet. And he went in there, and again, why I love Chris so much is he jumped right in. And, he's yucking it up with those guys, high-fiving them and taking pictures. And then we went out onto the field. And for those kids to be able to see someone like that, right, and see what kind of work he puts in to be at the highest level, I could see a direct change in those kids from that day on, and how they went about their business. And I was just so grateful that I played a little part in that.
No. You played a big part in that. You played a big part in that, and I want to just tell you why. Because my son Jack went to Maynard Jackson High School, which is an inner city school right in the heart of downtown Atlanta. And certainly there were players on his team whose family members, fathers and mothers both, had been in the same circumstance where they didn't really know their mom or dad for whatever reason. And oftentimes that reason was prison or drugs or both or whatever it was. And then it happened to Jack, to his dad, very publicly while he was a high school football player during football season. And, he's dealing with, I'm sure, whatever he dealt with from both his friends and maybe people that weren't his friends and the other team and whatever. And for you to be present, first of all, not just at an inner city school in Kansas City, but one that has a brand new football program, providing a brand new program for young men and ultimately young women with the cheering and the band and everything else that goes on to have a positive pathway. And then you get your NFL friend, a legend, to come in to meet them and show them, that's a big deal. And that's why I think, one of the things for AARA and why it's important to have both of you in leadership at AARA is because Coach Cochran had this vision of the Purple Project, where he wants to do for fall sports, football in particular, during September, which is National Recovery Month, but also year round, but primarily in September. Just like in October, players wear pink for breast cancer. We want players on football fields and cheerleaders and band members wearing purple for Recovery Month. And men like you who understand football and have credibility in football can change everything from the NFL down to a new startup high school in the central district of Kansas City that's only been around for 2 years. And I don't care if you're paying $10,000 for a Super Bowl ticket or you're one of 30 people at a Maynard Jackson high school football game, and there's no need for crowd control because there's no crowd. But that the purple being on those players will start a conversation. And that conversation will impact everybody from the Waffle House waitress to the president of the local bank and everybody in between. And that's you were perfect segue, Brett, into the Purple Project. And Coach, that's the kind of stuff that project's going to accomplish with the two of you at the helm of that.
Yeah. Man, in recovery, we never know all the ins and outs. And when we found out that when I found out September was recovery month, and that our color was purple, my mind immediately went to a locker room, and my mind went immediately to 2008. I'll never forget it. A kid asked me, can I wear this purple socks to practice? And I was like, Saban's going to kill you. And he's like, well, I'll go talk to him about it. And so the kid didn't wear them that day. I said, hey, if this is something important to you, let's go talk to coach. He went and talked to coach, and coach was like, hey, this kid has lost a family member to breast cancer, and he wants to represent by wearing pink. We need to be, everybody has to look the same, we need to be in uniform, and let's let these kids wear some pink. And that hit me like a ton of bricks. And since we started AARA, it has been my number one objective is to get purple on athletes. I went to a basketball game the other day for my son, and I was like, man, if these kids were wearing purple socks, everybody would ask why they're wearing purple socks. Even if they were purple footies, they'd ask, if they had a purple ribbon on their jersey. I think the conversation could get, you talk about the purpose is to eliminate the whisper. That's what we're talking about, right? We're trying to eliminate the whisper, eliminate the stigma of addiction. And now we're going to talk about seeing with your help, we're going to get with Britt, you're going to help me get the NFL. Yeah, buddy. We're going to get college, and we're going to get high schools. And it's going to take us an army, Britt. Me and you, baby.
Coach, let me say, and Britt, you're a member of our board, and we thank you for that leadership. And sure, how awesome would it be for a fan? And I'll just keep it in your family. How awesome would it be if the Chiefs wore a purple ribbon on the back of their helmet or purple socks? Or how awesome would that be on a Sunday to see that? It'd be awesome. Everybody would love it. I'm sure they talk about it on ESPN and all the sports places. But it's also awesome when Central High School in Kansas City or Maynard Jackson High School in Atlanta do it too, because that's the local community. And so everywhere, Jack, my son, he didn't play at Georgia or LSU or Alabama or Arizona State. Go Sun Devils, right? He didn't do that. He played at a Division III team in Farmville, Virginia. We're on an average Saturday. The crowd size was maybe the one section at Sanford Stadium in Athens, but those were families, and those are people that have been impacted by this epidemic. So I don't care if it's NFL. I don't care if it's a Division I, II, or III in college. I don't care if it's a big state powerhouse football team that's supposed to win the championship, our team that gets 40 parents that show up to watch their kids and everything in between. We can save lives with this project. And I want folks to know that over the next few weeks and months, Scott, what's our website, Coach?
EliminateTheWhisper.com.
At EliminateTheWhisper.com, over the next few months, you're going to see little packages.
That's right.
So maybe you can't buy the Kansas City Chiefs a uniform from head to toe. You can't do that because you're not Nike. But you can say, all right, I can buy Maynard Jackson High School in Atlanta a set of stickers for every kid's helmet. Or I could buy them some purple wristbands. I can do that in my community and make a difference. So we're going to have a platform for anybody that wants to help up on the website soon so that we can have purple all over America next September.
That's so awesome. Let's go.
Let's go.
Go. I mean, let's do it. You know, and I don't mean to keep harping on it, but I believe in, you know, from my government world, I listen to you guys talk about coaching and it's fascinating to me. And I think about, you know, campaigns. We run campaigns a similar way that you guys run a team a season, because you got to win a campaign to get in office in the first place, right? And campaigns have a definite lifespan between the day they start and election day. And it's over. You're going to win or lose on election day, and that's it. There's no third option. And when you think about a campaign, you've got to take a message and a controversial candidate, you know, so half the country hates half the candidates, right? And you got to take this thing where people are split and try to get a majority of people to get behind a person or an idea. And that's what we're trying to do, is say there's stigma around this disease, but we can get a majority of the community behind it. And I love watching the NFL on Sunday, and I love watching college game day on Saturday. And now I know they play all throughout the week, but these Friday night light games on high school fields across America on a Friday night, listen, everybody out there watching this video or this podcast, maybe you're listening to this podcast while you're driving. You know who your local high school football team is. You went to a local high school, and you can help AARA. You can help these two coaches by talking to your coach, your principal, your PTA president, your booster club president, your athletic director at your school, and say, I know some people that got some purple stuff, and reach out to us through our website and help us help you get purple next September at your high school, at your local college, and maybe even your favorite NFL team.
And look, it's going to save lives. Like that's what we're trying to do, is save lives, right? Like that's what the stigma is about. We're trying to save lives. And I think having the conversations is kind of the beginning, you know, when you see purple and your son comes home and he's wearing purple socks and you're like, hey, you know, what's that about? Well, we're doing this to eliminate the whisper, eliminate the stigma around addiction, because we're losing 200 people a day. 200 people a day are dying from this disease. And so I don't know what more. The ages 18 to 45, we're losing a generation. We don't need to have World War III, because we're having it in our own backyard. 70% of Americans are getting touched by this disease. 70%. And so it hits everybody, but everybody's still, my nephew struggles. It's still, you know, my social media, I get a direct message every day of somebody struggling. You know, I just had one, I hate to bring this up, but I just had one that he wouldn't go get treatment. And he said that he was the breadwinner for his family, and he had 2, maybe 3 little kids. And I gave him my cell number and we started talking. He wouldn't go get treatment. And sure enough, his wife, his mom, and his sister all reached out to me in the past 2 days saying that he passed away. All because he was afraid he was going to lose his job. He couldn't get help because he was afraid he was going to lose his job. And now that mother doesn't have a son, and that those kids don't have a dad. And so this is a serious disease. And the Purple Project is a perfect example of how we can save lives. And it's so simple, Maybe maybe one day I see that trophy back there, Britt. I don't see
I
it.
wasn't going to say anything about it, but I see it too. Kind of casually placed back there.
Maybe that trophy will be purple one day.
Yeah.
Hey, Coach, let me ask the other coach, Coach Britt, this very serious question. And I was debating whether or not I was going to ask you, but because of what Coach Cochran just said, I want to ask you this. And I don't, sometimes I joke around about this, but there's no joke here. So it was a tremendous honor and privilege for me. Jack's, my son, his little inner city school didn't exactly have a special teams coach because it's not an emphasis. So Jack can kick field goals and this stuff. And the head coach says, well, look, why don't you come out, hang out? Because I wasn't working. I hadn't been arrested yet, but I didn't really have a job. And he's like, look, you can make sure the snapper and the holder go do these things. I wasn't a coach, please. I was a glorified babysitter, but I did make sure that
That's what a coach is, by the way.
Well, I wasn't going to say it, but you can say it. But there I was, and I'm on the field, and my son's there, and it's great. And I guess at some level, these kids start going, okay, this guy's going to tell us what to do. So yeah, all that's going on. And then one Friday, I go out on a binge, and I get arrested over the weekend, and I wasn't at the game that Friday night, and I did go not to prison but to jail, and I get out of jail, and it's in the news, and I'm like, well, I guess I'm never going to set foot. And I was in the PTA too, by the way. And I guess I'm never going to even be allowed on campus. That's where my mind went. God, I've been charged with a felony. I'm not allowed to go literally on campus. And, the principal and the head coach got me up there and said, get your butt back on the field. And by the way, you're not just going to be in the PTA. You're going to be an officer in the PTA and get, go do these things. And they just made me feel so welcome. And I was so ashamed the first day that I walked back to the practice. And these other coaches, real coaches, who professional coaches that got paid money to be coaches. A couple of the guys came up to me and they said, come over here, I want to talk to you. And one of them said, listen, you don't know this, but I went to prison for this many years. And the other one said, I went to prison for this many years. And your jail, it's a joke. Welcome to the fraternity, man. Are you going to judge us? No, sir, I'm not. Well, we ain't judging you, and get your butt back out here. And I noticed a couple of the players would come up to me, even away from Jack, and they'd want to talk about things, drugs that were in their family, or with their friends. And it was almost like what I was going to allow shame to isolate me for forever from this place that I liked being. And it was almost like when I went back, I had more moral authority than I had before. And what I wanted to ask you, because you've coached at a different level and your news has been truly nationwide, do you feel, and what would your message be to others, that it's not about shame and you can't undo what you've done, but this really is the manifestation of doing the next right thing in a very, very public and powerful manner. Do you feel that? Do you understand do you agree with my premise and my off base, on base? And how did you personally feel about that? And what would you say to others about that?
That's a deep question. I think it's natural to feel that shame and that guilt. But I think the most important thing is that you own it, right? And then when you go back out there, you're able to touch someone else's life and maybe they don't have to go through the same thing you went through. And it's not easy to get back out there, but you're not doing it for you, right? You're doing it for someone else. And so paying that forward. We all make mistakes, and luckily we live in a country that, listen, they're gonna get on you when you screw up, but it's also the most forgiving country in the world, and it's the greatest country in the world for a reason, you know. And so I think for me, I had to put that aside and just own it, you know, own the mistake, but learn from it, and then try to go help somebody else and pay that forward that way. So I would definitely encourage anybody who has gone through something like that. Don't let it hold you back, you know, grow from it, learn from it and grow from it. And then try to go help somebody else, right? Because that's the only way to really make amends. You can't go back and change what you did. But you can have a living amends by just doing the next right thing and trying to help somebody else not make those same mistakes.
All right, so we're gonna close it out.
I love it, man. I appreciate it, man.
Such a powerful episode. Now let's do a couple things on the closeout. Yep. All right, so Coach Reid, I got two coaches now. Coach Reid, give us a shout out for that company that hired you and believed in you one more time.
Lexi J Wellness. You can find them at lexijwellness.com.
All right. Now, Coach, where can folks find you personally? Can they find you on social media?
Heck yeah, they can find me. I'm at Coach Yeah on pretty much I'm on everything. So I'm at Coach Yeah on most of them.
We got Coach Yeah. Now, Coach Reid, are you on social media? I
am. I'm not really out there all that much, but I'm on there. You can look me up. I'm at front 7 _FB on Instagram.
Because y'all know the millions of people that are going to listen to this podcast, they're going to find the two of you guys on social media. Check it out. Watch out. Now, you can also find the American Addiction Recovery Association on social media, and Jack Breedlove will have some scrolls that come across here with all of our social media stuff. But you can check us out on Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram, and X. And of course, Coach Yeah, and myself personally up there. But, you know, I want to end by saying thank you both as two leaders for bringing recovery from your perspective as leaders in the sports world to motivate so many folks that follow football to understand that, you know, what you guys went through, if you can overcome it, they can overcome what they're going through. You both are showing that recovery is real in football. You're showing recovery is real across the SEC. You're showing recovery is real in Kansas. And, you know, thank you guys for your leadership, because recovery is real.
Thank you, man. I appreciate you guys having me on here. You guys are doing amazing things, and I appreciate you guys letting me be a part of it.
It's time to end the whisper. So many suffer in silence. I might not save them all, no, but I'ma die trying. It's time to end the whisper. Never thought in my life it would happen to me, but it did. And now I'm the voice for recovery.